We'd like to ask you a few questions.
The stranger at sundown. The last light of the desert day stretched across the mesas like spilled gold. The cowboy rode slowly, shoulders sagging from dust and distance. His name was Luke Calder, a drifter whose horse knew the rhythm of hunger better than the sound of gunfire. The two of them had crossed 100 miles of red earth and silence, and Luke's only thought now was of water, shade, and a bed that wasn't moving. He hadn't planned to ride this far south. The trail had chosen him, an old outlaw road twisting through Apache country, forgotten by traders and lawmen alike. It was near dark when he spotted the faint curl of smoke against the horizon. Not a campfire, too steady. A homestead, maybe. Luke touched the brim of his hat, squinting. "Easy, Jasper," he murmured to his horse. "Just a place to rest. We'll be gone by sunup." But the desert had a habit of laughing at plans. The Three Sisters homestead stood at the foot of a small bluff, its adobe walls softened by the years. A corral sagged nearby, and 3 lanterns glowed in the windows like watchful eyes. The cowboy dismounted, wincing as his boots met solid ground. He tied Jasper to the hitching post and knocked on the door. After a moment, it opened just enough for a pair of eyes, sharp, black, and cautious, to meet his. "What do you want, stranger?" Luke removed his hat. "Evenin', ma'am. I'm just lookin' for a place to rest. I can pay with work, mend a fence, haul water, whatever you need." The woman studied him for a long moment. The light behind her caught in the braid over her shoulder, silver glinting among the black strands. Finally, she stepped back. "You can come in," she said, "but only till sunrise." Luke nodded gratefully and stepped inside. The warmth of the small room nearly undid him. The air smelled of mesquite smoke and cornmeal. 2 other women looked up from the table, sisters by the look of them, faces carved by the same sun and sorrow. They spoke softly in Apache before the eldest woman, the one who'd opened the door, gestured toward him. "I am Naomi, eldest here," she said. "These are my sisters, Tala and Wren. This was our husband's house once." Luke's eyes flicked toward the mantel where a faded photograph stood, a man in uniform, proud and still. 3 black ribbons were tied beside it. "I see," he said quietly. "I mean no disrespect. I just need a night's peace." "You'll have it," Naomi said. "There's stew if you've got manners." "I do," Luke replied, managing a tired smile. They ate in near silence. The only sounds were the crackle of the fire and the desert wind pushing against the shutters. When Luke finished, Wren, the youngest, poured him a second bowl without a word. Her dark eyes flickered with something he couldn't name. Tala broke the quiet first. "You ride alone, cowboy?" "Always." "No wife?" Luke gave a low chuckle. "Never found one that wanted to live out of a saddle." Naomi's gaze softened just slightly. "Maybe you never stopped long enough for one to find you." He didn't answer. After supper, he helped carry buckets from the well without being asked. The moon had risen, painting the ground silver. Wren watched him from the porch, her shawl pulled tight around her shoulders. "You're not afraid?" she asked suddenly. "Of what?" "Of this place. Of us. White men don't usually ride this far unless they mean trouble." Luke looked up at her, the moonlight catching the edge of his smile. "Ma'am, I'm too tired to mean trouble." She tilted her head, half smiling despite herself. "Maybe tired men make the most trouble." He laughed softly and went back to hauling water. By the time the work was done, Naomi was standing in the doorway again. "You can sleep in the storeroom. There's a cot. And you'll be gone when the rooster calls, yes. Yes, ma'am. But when he lay down, Luke found sleep didn't come easy. The night was alive with coyotes and distant drums. The widows' voices drifted through the walls, soft, rhythmic, like a prayer. He couldn't understand the words, but the sound wrapped around him, warm and sad. He closed his eyes and dreamed of wind, fire, and 3 faces half-lit by moonlight. Morning came with the smell of coffee and the sound of laughter, unexpected, gentle. Luke stepped outside, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. The sisters were working in the yard, tending to chickens and a stubborn goat that seemed intent on mischief. Naomi noticed him first. "You're still here." "I figured I'd fix that fence before I go," Luke said. "Seems it's holdin' more air than boards." Tulla smiled. "You have sharp eyes for a man just passin' through." He shrugged. "Can't ride past something that needs mendin'." "Bad habit." Naomi's expression softened again. "Then stay. Just for the day." He hesitated, but the breeze carried the scent of fresh bread, and the sound of the sisters' laughter settled somewhere deep in his chest. "All right," he said finally. "Just for the day." By noon, he'd repaired the corral, tightened the water trough, and found himself whistling, a thing he hadn't done in years. Wren brought him lemonade, her hands brushing his as she passed the cup. "You work like a man who's running from something," she said quietly. "Maybe I am," he admitted. She studied him. "Maybe we all are." That evening, the 4 of them sat outside, watching the sun slip behind the red hills. For the first time in a long while, Luke felt still, no road ahead, no ghosts behind. Naomi spoke softly. "You could stay longer, Cowboy. The land's big enough for one more hand." He looked at her, then at Tulla and Wren. 3 women, bound by loss, yet strong as the stone beneath their feet. "I only meant to find a place to rest," Luke said slowly. "But maybe I found something else." The wind stirred through the mesquite, carrying the scent of sage and rain. None of them spoke after that. The desert didn't need words. It only waited to see what the dawn would bring. The hearts that chose to stay. The next dawn rose pale and gold over the desert hills, painting the sky with the quiet promise of another long day. Luke Calder stood by the corral, watching Jasper nose the water trough. He should have been saddled up by now, already chasing the horizon. That was what he did, what he'd always done. But something in the stillness here made leaving feel like tearing a page from a book before finishing the story. Behind him, footsteps crunched softly on the dirt. Naomi's voice followed, calm and steady. "You meant to ride out early." Luke turned, hat in hand. "I did. But that goat of yours keeps Che-Win on the reins. Guess he wants me to stay." Naomi's lips curved slightly. "Maybe he knows what the land knows." "And what's that?" "That sometimes a man's road ends where his heart finds rest." He looked at her for a long moment, unable to find an answer. Naomi didn't press him. She simply handed him a piece of bread wrapped in cloth and turned back toward the house, her dark braid swaying with every step. By midday, the desert heat was shimmering like glass. Luke found himself fixing the front gate, though no one had asked. Tulla came out carrying a jug of water. Her sleeves were rolled, and her face glowed with the sun's reflection. "You work too much for a guest," she said. Luke smiled. "Work keeps my hands quiet. And your heart." He paused, the hammer still in his grip. "That's louder these days." Tulla set the jug down, watching him. "You think we're strange, don't you? 3 women, no husbands, livin' on Apache soil where most white men won't even ride through." "I think you're braver than most men I've met," Luke said softly. "The kind that don't need rescuin'." Tulla smiled faintly. "Maybe. But sometimes bravery just means gettin' up each morning when there's no reason to." He nodded slowly, understanding more than he wanted to admit. That evening, a storm gathered over the mesas, one of those desert tempests that rolled in quick and wild. Naomi hurried the animals into shelter while Wren latched the windows. Luke helped them pull down the laundry and tie the shutters. Thunder cracked, and the sky opened up. When it was done, they were soaked through, laughing breathlessly in the doorway. For a brief moment, the years of loss seemed to wash off their faces. Wren looked at Luke, water dripping from her dark hair, her eyes bright and fearless. "You brought the rain, Cowboy," she teased. "Maybe it followed me," he said, grinning. "Seems I needed it too." They stood there, caught between thunder and silence, until Naomi's voice broke the spell. "Get dry," she ordered gently. "There's stew waiting." Luke smiled, but his heart was thudding faster than any storm. Dinner was warm and easy. The rain pattered against the roof like a lullaby. Afterward, Naomi poured coffee while the sisters shared stories of their childhood, of dances under the stars and songs their mother used to sing. When the talk turned quiet, Naomi studied Luke across the table. "You've been running a long time," she said. "Who chases you?" Luke's jaw tightened. "No one. Not anymore. Used to be the army, used to be bad men with longer shadows than mine. But time outran us all." "So now you run from ghosts," Tala said softly. He gave a humorless smile. "Aren't we all?" The room went still. Then Naomi said quietly, "Ghosts only stay if you feed them." Her words hung in the air like smoke. Later that night, Luke couldn't sleep. He stepped outside, the desert air cool and sharp after the storm. The moon hung full over the mesas, lighting the wet earth in silver streaks. He found Wren sitting by the fence, a blanket around her shoulders. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked. She shook her head. "The rain wakes the memories. My husband died when the river flooded. Every time it storms, I hear the water again." Luke sat beside her, the silence between them gentle. "I know what it's like to lose someone," he said after a while. "I had a brother. He died in the war. I never went home after that." Wren turned to him, her eyes soft. "So you just kept moving?" He nodded. "Easier than staying still." She smiled faintly. "Until now." He looked at her then, really looked, the way moonlight caught the silver in her hair, the way her strength lived quietly behind her sadness. Something in him shifted, slow and certain. "Until now," he agreed. Days turned to a week. Luke meant to leave each morning, but somehow there was always something to fix, another fence, another broken latch, another reason to stay. The land began to feel familiar beneath his boots. The sisters grew used to his presence too. Tala hummed when she worked now. Naomi laughed sometimes. Wren's eyes lingered a little longer each day. Still, Luke knew he was an outsider. This was their world, not his. Then one afternoon, trouble found them. A group of riders came out of the west, 3 men, dust-covered and rough. They rode up slow, eyes sharp and hands near their guns. Luke was in the yard splitting wood when they stopped. The lead man, a scarred drifter with a grin that didn't reach his eyes, tipped his hat. "Afternoon, ladies. Heard there's a white man hidin' out here. That true?" Naomi stepped forward. "No one's hidin'. You're on our land." The man chuckled. "Apache land, you mean? You 3 got no business here neither, 'cept maybe in my camp." Luke dropped the axe. "You boys lost." The man's eyes narrowed. "You the cowboy?" "Name's Luke Calder," he said evenly. "And you're trespassin'." The silence that followed was tight as a gun barrel. The man spat. "We don't take orders from saddle trash." Luke's hand hovered near his belt. "Then maybe you take 'em from a colt." The air cracked. 2 shots, clean, fast, final. When the smoke cleared, the drifters were galloping away, one wounded, one down. Luke stood still, gun lowered, the echo fading into the hills. Naomi's voice broke the quiet. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did," Luke said. "They weren't just passing through." She looked at him long and hard, then nodded once. "Then you did right." That night, the house was quiet again. Luke sat alone by the dying fire, the gun still on the table. Wren came to him, her eyes full of unspoken things. "You protected us," she said softly. "I did what needed doing." She stepped closer. "And now what? Will you leave before the sun rises?" He met her gaze, the flames reflecting between them. "If I stay, I don't know what I become. Maybe a man who stops running." Her hand brushed his, gentle but certain. "Maybe a man who belongs." Luke looked down at their hands, then up at her. The decision settled in him like a stone dropping into still water. Morning came clear and calm, the air fresh from the storm. Luke saddled Jasper but didn't mount. Naomi watched from the porch, her expression unreadable. "You're leaving," she said. "I was," he answered, "but the road looks emptier than it used to." Tala crossed her arms, smiling faintly. "You finally see what's worth staying for?" Luke looked at Wren, who stood beside the corral, sunlight in her hair. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I reckon I do." Naomi nodded, a knowing look in her eyes. "Then the house is yours too, Cowboy, if you can handle 3 widows who won't be told what to do." Luke chuckled. "Wouldn't dare try." As the sun climbed higher, the land shimmered with new light. Jasper grazed lazily by the fence, no longer restless. The 3 sisters' homestead felt alive again, laughter in the yard, bread in the oven, and a man humming softly as he worked. Luke Calder had set out looking for a place to rest. What he found instead was a home, a family, and a reason to stay still for the first time in his life. The desert wind whispered through the sage, carrying with it the echo of old songs and new beginnings. And somewhere between the red hills and the endless sky, 3 hearts and 1 weary cowboy finally found peace.